Do you consider yourself a rational decision maker? Most of us overestimate the degree to which ourselves and others make rational decisions. And so I'm going to tell you about a time when I did exactly that. A few years ago, I bought a Volvo SUV, very safe car. I was extremely proud of this smart, rational decision I'd made to buy this car. In fact, for months after the purchase, given the slightest opening in conversation, I would regale friends and family with fun safety facts about the Volvo. And I kept right on believing that I made this very smart, rational decision until one day I was driving with my husband, and he looked over and there was a woman in the next lane in a little red convertible. And he said, "Honey, she looks like she's having fun. I think you'd like a car like that. We should get you one someday." And instantly, I felt like my chest was in a vice. And I knew exactly where that feeling came from. And it called into question this entire allegedly rational decision that I'd made to buy this Volvo. Let me explain. So when I was 12, my parents ruined my life. And by that I mean they moved from our little house in town where I could walk to see all of my friends to an acreage out in the country that was within walking distance of exactly no one. And I was moping around one day, as one does as a preteen. And my mom took pity on me and said she'd drive me into town to see one of my friends. So she loaded me and my brother into her little red car, and off we went. And it was no more than 30 seconds after she dropped me off. I was standing there talking to my friends, and we heard the squealing of brakes and the sound of metal-on-metal impact. And my sweet little friend, I will never forget this, yelled, "Yay, car accident!" And we ran outside, and I looked down the street to see what was left of my mom's little red car, smashed against a full-size pickup truck. And as I'm tearing down the street toward that wreckage, I'm scanning for movement because my brain is kind of preparing me and telling me that no one could have survived that accident. Now, this story has a happy ending. I would not do that to you. So why, 30 plus years later, do I still feel that terror in my chest when I looked at that woman in that little red car? Or even standing here telling you this story today? Because emotion beats logic. Now that's just one story, but there's actually an entire body of research on how and why people make the decisions that they do. And a man named Baba Shiv at Stanford University has found that 90 to 95% of the decisions we make are emotional, not rational. Even more interestingly, after we make our emotional decision to decide what we want to do, then we look around for facts that support that decision to convince ourselves that we made a rational one. Now, I'm not a marketer. I own a user experience research and app development firm that works behind the scenes with a lot of brands you know in insurance, healthcare, and finance. And the reason I'm here to talk to you about marketing today is that if you're being asked to run a marketing campaign, what you're really being asked to do is drive behavior. And you can do that in a way that feels a little uncomfortable to the user, like maybe they're being bombarded with messages to do something they don't quite want to do. Or you can do it in a way that feels smooth and empowering to the user. And if you're like most people, you're probably thinking, that second way sounds better, but it also sounds like you need like an army of PhD psychologists to pull it off. So if that's what you're thinking, I've got good news for you because there is a 3-step formula that we've spent years developing, and I can teach it to you in 7 seconds. You ready? I see you. Build trust with the basics. Introduce new pathways. Let's take those one at a time. I see you. You've got to get people's attention somehow. They're bombarded with messages every day. How do you stand out? Most brands get this wrong, and they think that the way to do it is to talk about how great the brand or the product is. Most people find the most interesting topic to be what?
Themselves.
Themselves, yeah. So the way to get someone's attention is to talk about them in a way that makes them feel understood. That's the I see you moment. That can be as simple as worried about interest rates, so are we. It establishes that instant connection. Now, once you've got the audience's attention, now you have to build trust. Can't assume that we have trust. Most brands don't. In fact, trust is on the decline across all industries. So how do you build that trust? You find the promise that got the person there, and you deliver impeccably on it. What do I mean by a promise? You might be sitting here thinking, I didn't make any promises. What are you talking about? Whenever someone arrives at a digital property, they got there somehow. Maybe they received an email. Maybe they clicked on an ad. Something got them there. There was a piece of messaging that they were enticed to learn more about. You want to deliver impeccably on whatever that implicit or explicit promise was. And if you can't deliver impeccably, I have news for you, that is not your message. Find a new one. Now, once we've gotten their attention and built trust, now things really start to get interesting because now we can open up new pathways using the emotional engines of behavior. And when we're talking about those emotional engines of behavior, we have a couple of them at our disposal. The first one that I told you about with the little red car story is fear. Fear is really good at motivating short-term behaviors, like run toward that wreckage, or run away from that masked intruder. It's also good at motivating impulse purchases. So if you have ever bought something and by the time it showed up on your doorstep, you didn't really remember ordering it, that's a good sign that your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fight or flight decision making, was at the helm when that purchase was made. In other words, it was a fear-based decision on some level. While fear is really good at driving those short-term behaviors, it has a flaw. It's not good at all at driving long-term behaviors. And why do we care about that in the digital space? Because we're almost always being asked to drive long-term behaviors. If you've been asked to build customer loyalty or stickiness or even increase referrals, guess what? Those are all long-term behaviors. Fear is not very good at doing that, but there's something that is, and that is hope. Now, one reason that we know that hope is good at building long-term behaviors is because of a man named Dr. Shane Lopez. He worked for the Gallup organization, and he didn't start out to study hope. He started out wanting to study intelligence because he was interested in what made some people better able to make decisions quickly to move their lives forward. And he thought the answer was going to be intelligence, that more intelligent people would be able to do that better. What he actually found was that intelligence wasn't it at all, it was hope. And the reason I'm bringing this up to you is because that 3-step formula I just told you about, I see you, build trust with the basics, introduce new pathways. It's not only good at motivating short-term behaviors, but it's also really good at driving long-term behaviors because it creates hope. And you can see an example of what this looks like in action just by watching ChatGPT. Have you ever asked ChatGPT a vulnerable question? Talking about like the kind of question that you would typically only ask a good friend. It will follow this exact formula. It will validate you, that's the I see you moment. It will answer your direct question, that's building trust with the basics. And then it will offer you options to continue your query in avenues you might not have thought of. It's extremely effective at building stickiness, not just because it's smart, but because it makes people feel hopeful and capable. And when people feel capable, they act. The fundamental truth that I hope you take away from this today is that whether based on fear or hope, emotion is the foundation of almost all of our decision making. We don't move people with facts. That's a myth. We move them by making them feel seen, supported, and ready for what's next. Happy driving.